Hey everyone, Curse Deck Builder here, making our way to 10,000 decks assisted. And we've got another Lord of the Rings commander here. This is Éowyn, Shieldmaiden, Humans Tribal. Seems like it's a tribal day today, and it seems like it's another anonymous day as this deck comes to us from an anonymous user who says that they would like me to refine it to increase power level. And if they have any restrictions, they say no. Since they're anonymous, I can say this without feeling bad. Please give me a little more information than that. Refining a deck to increase its power level, that could mean anything. I don't know what power level you're aiming for. However, there's a few interesting inclusions because, I really like this deck. I really like Éowyn, and I really like Human Tribal because there's a lot of directions to go into. Human Tribal is one of those tribes that exists against all 5 colors, and because of that, we have so many directions we can go into, and 5-color human decks can easily be made. So I like when they're not 5-color. I like when we have a 3-color restriction in exchange for maybe a more specific commander, or in this case, maybe a much more powerful commander. Éowyn Shieldmaiden is really strong, but let's not get ahead of ourselves and say, as always, the deck list will be in the video description below. This is a pretty good humans deck for Éowyn to start with. There's a few things that feel a little strange, but overall, it's a really solid list to start with. If you're interested in playing Éowyn, I think if you just take this list and make it, you'll be pretty happy. Now, I don't know if it's the most budget thing. It says about $745 in American, but I think you could cut it down a little bit depending on fetches. You could proxy some cards and have a good time. But yes, if you want an easy to build kind of deck, this is your answer without thinking too much about it. However, we're going to see what we can change. And of course, while you're in the video description down below, you can see there's a link to the form you can fill out if you'd like to send me your deck. And if you'd like your deck to be the next deck on my list, the next deck I make a video about, there's a link to go to the front of the queue as well. So, who is Éowyn Shieldmaiden, and why is she our humans commander? Well, for those who know Lord of the Rings, we all know who Éowyn is, and I really like Éowyn. I think Éowyn is a great character in the books and in the movies, and I really like how she is in the card game as well. Like many characters in Lord of the Rings, she's got multiple cards for her that kind of show her, her character arc and progression. And I really like that this is her beheading the Nazgul, the Witch King's steed, I believe is what's happening here. That being said, this is really weird art. This is my only complaint of the card. The art is really strange. It almost looks like she should have flying, because maybe she's on the ground and the smoke is making it confusing, but I think she's jumping in a weird way. It's just a strange art for such a cool character. So, who is she? She is a 5-mana Jeskai, that's blue, red, white, human knight 5/4. She has first strike, which makes her quite a dangerous opponent to begin with, and she has, at the beginning of combat on your turn, if another human entered the battlefield under your control this turn, create 2/2/2 human knight tokens with trample and haste. And then if you control 6 or more humans, draw a card. This is so good. I cannot begin to really describe how good this is, right? So she by herself, if triggered, creates 2/2/2s, and they have haste and trample, which is really good stats on tokens. And then the additional, she draws a card. But for me, who cares if she draws a card? The fact that she creates 2/2/2s, my goodness, means she's bringing in 4 additional power, 2 additional bodies in a tribal deck. This is so powerful. I am really impressed by it. So generally, if you wait a turn cycle, you'll trigger her for sure. But a lot of my additions are going to be to try to ensure that we can trigger her the second she comes down with or without haste. Because we don't need to attack with her. We don't need anything like that, right? So We just want to be able to get this set up and going so that we can start reaping the rewards really quickly. So first we're going to do a bit of a look at the deck, and then we'll go into my additions. So looking at the deck, what have we got here? We've got a really nice balanced deck, a lot of really strong instants and sorceries here, some support in mana rocks, some good enchantments, but generally we're a 32 creature deck because we are a tribal deck, and that makes a lot of sense. Outside of our commander, we don't have a lot of draw, but that's fine because we're just playing to the board anyways. The goal is to drop Éowyn and start, getting her. She's an army in a can, so she's going to start producing creatures, and from that point on, we're going to reap the benefits and eventually start drawing cards. So let's look at the curve. The curve is a little, chunky, but it's not bad. It's kind of evenly distributed all around. I do like the large inclusion of 1 mana cards here, and I like that we don't go above 6 mana, but it is kind of, centered on 3 quite a bit. I believe we have, 16 total cards at 3 mana, and that's quite a bit. But the number we care about the most is 5 mana, that is the mana cost of our commander. And absolutely, no single card should be cast before Éowyn coming out because she's such a beast, we want her as soon as possible. So let's see what our options are here and see if there's any cards here that we think are worth cutting. Flame Rush Rider is technically kind of a 4-drop. Whenever they attack, they create a token that's a copy of another attacking creature that's tapped and attacking. Exile the token at the end of combat. Now, this is cool. The problem is that it doesn't trigger Éowyn, because Éowyn triggers at the start of combat, and this creature triggers during combat. So, not particularly good for that. Now, what do we want to copy that's tapped and attacking, that's probably 3 mana and lower if we're looking at what our creature spells are if we want to dash this guy out. And my thing is there's not really a lot. I think Combat Celebrant doesn't work because you have to exert it as you attack with it. If it is attacking, it doesn't have a chance. And then we have a lot of legendaries. I guess Thalia's Lieutenant is the safest bet here, whereas everything else is just kind of okay. I guess Sarah Ascendant can come in as a 6/6 lifelink, which is cute. Frontline Medic. No, it doesn't work that way, but I guess you could sacrifice it during combat. But the problem is a lot of our other creatures are legendary. So like Blade Historian, but that doesn't stack with itself, so that doesn't matter. Let's see, is that it? Professional Facebreakers, I guess, is the best one here because it triggers twice. I guess looking at this, I'm not too impressed with Flame Rush Rider. I just don't think there's a lot of things that you really want to copy when you're attacking. And this kind of applies to Riona as well. Now, Riona is a bit stronger because she triggers whether she attacks or not. She also triggers at the beginning of combat, so if you stack your triggers, it will trigger Éowyn, so I like that a little more. But also, she has really sick art. I think that's really the thing that catches my eye, but I would say she's better than Flame Rush Riders by a large margin, so I would cut the Flame Rush Riders and I will keep Riona. Riona. Yeah. Let's say Riona. I might be wrong on that. Thalia's Lancers likewise has a pretty high, it's a pretty good card, right? 5 mana, you get a 4/4 first strike that's a really good body, and then on ETB, you get a legendary creature, or a legendary card, but most likely you're getting a creature. However, I don't know about this, right? I think we have already search a tutor for a legendary creature in white, Search for Glory, which I don't believe we're playing. Let's double check that. No, we're not playing that. And though we obviously like Thalia's Lancers more because we're in a tribal deck and it is a member of that tribe, this card having the same mana cost as our commander is just a bit of a problem, right? This card will never come out before Éowyn, and then after the fact, do we really want this to be you know, we'll have other cards to play. Thalia's Lancers is just okay. I think you should just play Search for Glory instead, you know, and you'll just be a little happier with the result. Zealous Conscripts is really, really nice. We're not playing... What do we need to combo with this? I guess Kiki Jiki, but we're not playing Kiki Jiki. So otherwise, it's just kind of a good value card. I think outside of like sacrifice outlets or a few other kind of mechanics, you know, anything that taps to create copies, which we just don't have here as far as I can tell. I just don't think Zealous Conscripts really belongs here. 5 mana, once again, is the number we're trying to avoid, and it just doesn't feel as strong here as somewhere else. It's really good in anything that can sacrifice what it steals, or blink and keep what it steals, or take Planeswalkers and use it, you know, against your opponents. But here, I don't know. I just don't see it doing anything that strong. Éowyn, King of Rohan. Let's see, double strike 2/2, gets a +1/+1 counter for each other human, and target player becomes the monarch. And then you deal damage to any target. This is really good. This is really, really good. I don't think I've ever read all of this text before. That is a lot of abilities. Wow, so you become monarch, then you deal damage to basically anyone. That's really, really good. Wow, I'm really impressed by this card. If you can give it haste, it's quite a beating. I think this is almost contenting with Éowyn as a really good humans commander, but obviously we lose the blue, so that's a different deck. But absolutely keep this card. This card is very, very good. World at War is really, really fun here. Obviously, kind of the mechanic here is that extra combats means extra triggers, and I do like that. I will say it is 5 mana, and though you get another rebound of it for free, it's close. I think if you really need cuts, this can be cut, and you can just put one of the other 4 mana versions of this card in, because there's quite a few. And I think you'll just be a little happier, you know? I know it's not great. And the thing is, you're technically... Actually, when I think about it, you're never casting this with Éowyn not out. Actually, you might if you have lethal, and then it doesn't matter, but generally you're not going to cast this card if Éowyn is not already out. So then it doesn't compete, and therefore I think it's fine. We can keep it. Coat of Arms. I don't like Coat of Arms myself. It's not a card I particularly like. It's a lot of math, and it is kind of win more, right? It's really good when you have like 10 humans, but it's kind of okay when you have 3 humans. And the fact that this affects your opponents as well kind of pushes it over the edge for me to make it just a kind of okay card. I think like you put this down and you sit down and this is in your opening hand and one of your opponents has a tribal deck, you're going to feel pretty dumb about it. So I like cutting this card, but I do understand it is a very much a fan favorite, so I will leave it to you guys to decide whether or not you want to play this in your human tribal deck. On the opposite end, Kindred Discovery with these cute crows is such a good card. So good. Every time I read this, I'm kind of stupefied about it because I always just assume that it's going to be either ETB or attack, but it's both. This is such a... If you were in blue tribal, play this card immediately. Like, put down every other card and play this card. It's so strong. And considering I want to put it into a deck that it literally competes with your commander, because honestly, if I have 4 humans and I untap with 5 mana and I have this card, I might cast this over Éowyn. I might. Drawing 4 cards immediately is so good, and that's not counting our humans that create tokens on attack. Like, so good. Absolutely play this card. All right, I'm going to quickly go over a few other cards that kind of stick out at me of cards I don't really like in this kind of deck. Farewell just doesn't really belong here. I don't really know what you're going to use this for. I guess the dream is to use it for everything but creatures, right? And even then, that's not really that impressive. Farewell just shouldn't be in your fair creature decks. Fair, I say, because it is a tribal deck, but it is a fair deck. You're just going to never cast this, or you're only going to cast this after you have nothing. And when do you have nothing? Well, when the board's been wiped, so no one else should have anything to begin with. So I just don't see this card being very, very good, even though it has mass appeal. Ha ha ha. Ah, goodness. Supreme Verdict is okay because at least it's just 4 mana and it can't be countered, so you can use it in certain situations. But at 6 mana, Farewell is just not going to do anything, and I don't particularly like it. Likewise, Rolling Earthquake, I get the horsemanship kind of thing that's going on. There's Rolling Earthquake, there's Lucian, I hope I pronounced that right, Scholar General, and Sun Quan, Lord of Wu. I don't know. I don't know. I get that they're really, really fun here. Lucian feels really, really weak. You know, if it's just a 4 mana unblockable creature that when it hits, you draw a card, that's really bad here. That's just really, really bad. And I don't particularly like it here. Sun Quan is much, much better. 6 mana to make all your creatures unblockable, which is exactly what Archetype of Imagination does as well. Really, really like it. Both of these cards are really, really strong here. And they're both humans, which is really surprising, but I do like it. And both of these are strong, but even with Sun Quan, I don't want Rolling Earthquake in here. Like, it's a card you only want to cast, you know, when you're so far ahead, or your creatures are big enough, or you have Sun Quan, and therefore I don't like it here, and I think it should be cut. This belongs in a dedicated horsemanship deck, if such a thing exists. All right, is there anything else? Door of Destinies is also a card I don't particularly like because you grow it on cast and not on ETB, which means it doesn't work with Éowyn in the way that I want it to. So I'm less impressed with this card, and I think it could be cut. For what it's worth, I think you could also play 1 or 2 more mana rocks. I'll leave that to you. You do have a 5 mana commander in 3 colors, and Commander Sphere is pretty bad, so you could cut Commander Sphere, cut Coat of Arms, cut Door of Destinies, and put in like 2 signets, and I think you'd be pretty happy. Remember that the most important signets here are the ones that are red and blue, because white is the majority of the deck. So getting white is the easy part, and blue and red is kind of tricky. Any other cards that kind of jump out at me? Let's see, not so much. I think not so much. I think the rest is really, really solid. Okay, let's talk about additions that I have for the deck. Let me find my additions. Okay, so the first few, sorry if that was louder, I had to step towards my mic. Let's start with looking at cards that enable our commander to immediately use her ability the turn she comes in. So the goal here is that we cast Éowyn at 5 mana, and then on that combat we get 2/2 human knights with trample and haste. That's a lot. 2 knights. We'll get 2 knights the second she comes in. So how do we do that? Well, we've got some good ones and we've got some questionable ones. So one that I think fits in here really, really nicely is Ephemerate. So why Ephemerate? Well, the first thing about Ephemerate is that it is a very good protection spell against a lot of things. So they try to target Éowyn, they try to target one of the creatures you want to keep, you ephemerate them, ephemerate your creature, and get it back. Now, it's a little wasted because we don't have that many really good ETBs. Loran is here, and then I think that's kind of it. Like, we can reset Sakashima. I think that's really it, and we can use, I told you to take out Zealous Conscripts, so maybe I won't say that, but we can reset the Exert. So I would say generally, I guess Thalia's Lieutenant is the really good one as well. I guess we don't have very good ETB targets for Ephemerate, but that's not why we're using it. We're going to use Ephemerate as a protection spell, and then with Rebound, on our upkeep we'll get it for free, which means a creature will come back into play, and that's going to trigger Éowyn right here in order, I guess this is the version I should be showing. It's going to trigger our Éowyn, and we're going to get the 2/2s after we cast her. So I think that's really, really good. The other one that I feel is very strong is Aether Vial. Now, Aether Vial belongs usually in decks that you can have 4 copies of it, and you only have 60 cards, so you can mulligan to it easier. But it's still a very, very good deck here. You can set it to on its way to 3 and leave it at 3, where a lot of your cards are at, and you can get benefit from it all the time, because it lets you flash in your creatures at the right time, on end steps to give them pseudo haste, or on your turn prior to combat after casting Éowyn, you can flash in Loran, for example, or Aragorn, King of the Gondor, or whatever, and get the benefits of getting your 2/2s for 2, your 2 knights, 2/2s for 2, your 2 knights really, really easily. So I like that there. It also, once again, is just a generally good card that you're not going to be too sad about. It effectively adds 1 to 3 mana to your mana pool if you use it every turn, which is pretty good. Another one that I think is, now we're getting to the last one, which is highly questionable, but I do really like, is Outlaw's Merriment. Outlaw's Merriment is the Robin Hood card, where you get one of Robin Hood's side character. I don't know them all by name. I know one of them is supposed to be Maid Mariam. That's the only one I do know. And I think Friar Tuck or something. I don't know all of them. But you can get each of these. So basically what happens at the beginning of your upkeep, you choose at random either a 3/1 with Trample Haste, a 2/1 with Lifelink and Haste, or a 1/2 with Haste, and on ETB it deals 1 damage. These are all pretty good creatures. I really like that they have Haste. The random element of it is kind of silly, but it is pretty cool. Like, this card is a lot of fun, I will say. But the fact that it creates on-tribe creatures per turn is cool, but the main thing you want about this is if you cast this on 4, on 5, you get a human entering the battlefield for Éowyn on combat. And you're going to be very, very happy with that. And then after that, it's just gas. Obviously, I was going to say the 3/1 is the best, but they all have haste, so you're generally really happy with no matter which one you get. And it is another like repeated token generator that'll put you towards those 6 humans that you need for Éowyn to draw you a card. So generally really, really good. Very big fan of this. The next 2 cards I want to talk about are haste enablers. Lightning Greaves is strangely absent in this deck. I feel like it's really, really good for a number of creatures that you have. Just giving a lot of your creatures haste, you're going to be very, very happy. But Éowyn getting Shroud is probably really the most important part of this card. Giving her haste is fine, because if you couldn't trigger her, her attacking doesn't do anything. Like, it doesn't change her trigger at all, but she is a 5/4 first strike, so smashing face with her right away is really, really nice. Alternatively, if you want a lot of a stronger effect of haste, Mass Hysteria is really good in a deck like this. I talk about these kind of cards a lot, like, is it Concordant Crossroads? It's something like that. There's a green, Concordant Crossroads, I believe it is. So green and red have a 1 mana all creatures have haste enchantment. And these cards are really, really good because they set up a kind of like mentality for the rest of the game. Your opponents are going to be attacking a lot more often because their creatures have haste. It's kind of just all of a sudden an ability they haven't thought about before because they've never thought of, you know, I don't know, Dark Confidant having haste, and now they get to attack with it, so they're going to do it. But as each player attacks with their creatures, they have less blockers, which incentivize other players to attack them as well, which creates a loop where your opponents will have fewer and fewer blockers and more attacks. Do you know who really benefits from your opponents having few blockers? You do. You are the danger that shows up with all of the humans and all of the creatures. You are the one that will take the most advantage out of this, and you are the one to create the most amount of blockers should the need arise that you're feeling a little bit, you need the defense, right? And that's really, really good. If you really want to finish off a card like this, you can find kind of like a Vigilance enabler in humans. I'm sure it does exist. And then you can attack with impunity and never have a bad time. Still a really, really good card. Unfortunately a little pricey, but I do think it's very, very strong. Then I have another non-human I'd like to add, and the last 2 cards will be humans, but Battle Hymn is also notably absent in a deck like this. Now, usually Battle Hymn feels really good in kind of a Spells Matter or Spell Slinger, you know, how do we put it? If you're playing like a young Pyromancer style deck where you want to cast spells and make creatures and gain mana from it, Battle Hymn is really, really nice. But here, I particularly like it because we have a lot of high mana red spells. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about Blade Historian. I'm talking about Riona Fire Dancer. I'm talking about like both, World at War and Breath of Fury, right? These are cards that are really, really strong that you can very much so use the red mana from Battle Hymn to cast several cards in a turn, right? If you have like 6 mana and you can spend 4 of it casting out one of your other cards and then use the rest to cast, Battle Hymn, and grab like Blade Historian and another card like Combat Celebrate, like anything, right? You're just going to be really, really happy with the results. Or what you can do is mix it with your other mana to generate the colorless mana for like Archetype of Imagination and let's say, I don't know, like Loran again, and then keep the blue, white from your other mana to kind of fill out the rest and have a very efficient turn. I just think it's a really high card. Now, it's only good when you have enough creatures in play, but I think that's fine because this is the main thing your deck does. So you're going to find a lot of situations where you will have the creatures and get the mana for the deck. So I think this is a very good inclusion into this kind of archetype. Then, speaking of creating tokens, something else that I really like here is Handwire Garrison. I play this in my cube, and it is consistently a beating. If you can give it haste, it's amazing, but by itself, creating 2 power on every attack is just really, really nice. You need the right attacks, and you need the right boosts for those 1/1s, but there's going to be very few situations that you're going to be sad to be using this card. That being said, it doesn't trigger Éowyn, so do be aware of that. And though it's a meld card, you can't really meld it because, well, you can, right? You can play, let's see, how do I find the other half of it? There we go. We can find the Battlements, which is a haste enabler, so maybe you should play this. Let me see if you're already playing it. You are already playing it. Well, there you go. Then you should play the Garrison for sure. Is the Garrison here and I'm blind? No, it is not. Was the Garrison in Considering? No, it's not there either. Interesting. But I would definitely play the Garrison. You can play both sides, but do you want to meld it? I don't know. Handwire the Writhing Township is a bit strange because for your deck, it doesn't create humans. It creates Eldrazi. But it is a really, really strong card. It puts 6 power in every time it attacks. So at a certain point, I mean, it's not too much of a problem to just, combine to meld the 2 and make such a strong card just on the side, where the 1/1s aren't cutting it, hit them with a 7/4 and have a good time. All right, my last inclusion is a human that I'm just a little surprised isn't in here, and that's Grand Abolisher. This is just straightforwardly a good card, but especially with a deck that benefits so much on its own turn, right? With the Éowyn combos, with the World at War stuff, with the the instant win of Breath of Fury, where if you set it up the right way, you have infinite attacks. Really, really good. The protection Grand Abolisher gives you during your own turn is just really, really nice. It's also kind of those play it and forget it kind of situations, because you never need to, think of Grand Abolisher. Once it's your turn, it's already in effect, and that's it, and your opponents cannot do anything. That being said, I'm sure there's some kind of weird thing you can do. Artifacts, creatures, enchantments. They could use land abilities. They could use instant speed planeswalker abilities. I think that's the only things that matter. But still, most likely your opponents are locked out during your turn and you can do whatever you want. All right, I think that's generally what I'm going to say about this deck. I like Éowyn the Shieldmaiden, or Éowyn Shieldmaiden. She's really, really strong, and she represents like a very, very strong, fun deck. Now, if you wanted to tune her down, I think you could probably get away with it. There's a lot of interesting ways to play her with different kinds of human tribal synergies, but in the long run, you're still going to be hated out of the game as if you have the strongest one, because Éowyn is just such a beast by herself. So, in my opinion, if you're going to play her to be average high kind of power level, and you'll have a really, really good time. Much like we were talking recently with Tom Bombadil, you can try to protect her, but I don't think there's much gain into doing that. We're already playing Swan Song. You're either going to get her effect or you won't. She's so strong, and your deck plan is strong enough that if they're just focusing down Éowyn, you're probably getting attacks against them for free as they tap out or hold mana for that. So you'll be in a good situation. I hope this video was helpful to you, and I hope anyone who's making a human deck, this video was helpful. If you would like to send me a draft of your own human deck or any deck, there is a link in the video description below that you can do so. And if you'd like your deck to be the next one I make a video about, well, there's a link to do that as well. As always, if you could like, comment, subscribe, I'd be very, very grateful. It helps the channel. And, if you have any ideas on human tribal that I haven't thought of, it sounds like I'm desperately asking. If you know how to play humans, please comment below. I'm doing my best here, but it's not my tribe. Well, all in all, I love Éowyn. I really like the deck. Good luck making it better.